Hi, Rosie Meleady here from lifeisshortmagazine.com. Today I'm talking to Lainey Liberty. Lainey is a 47-year-old single mum from California whose business was hit badly by the recession in 2008. But instead of crumbling under the pressure and stress, Lainey and her 9-year-old son Miro decided to take a different path. They decided to sell all their possessions and go on an adventure. The trip was supposed to last about a year. Now, nearly 5 years on and 14 countries later, Lainey and Miro continue to slowly travel around the globe, living an inspiring possession-free lifestyle and making an income from blogging about their experiences. Lainey, you're very welcome.
Hi, I'm great. Thank you so much for having me, and I'm really excited to be sharing my story with you.
Where are you at the moment? You're in Peru, is it?
We're in Cusco, Peru. We're high in the Andes. We're in the main city, which is part of the Sacred Valley, and we're not far from Machu Picchu, and there are 14 amazing ruins in the area that I love to explore, and it's just incredible. Yeah, we've been up here for about a year now. So in the beginning, when I said that some people would call us an expat at this time, it's because we've been stationary here in Cusco for such a long time, but we're inspired to stay, and we're not living by anybody else's rules, even a traveler's rules. I mean, we'll move when we're ready. So.
And you've no plans to move anywhere else at the moment. You're happy there, are you?
We love it here. We're starting to feel a little bit of conflict because we're both getting drawn to go to India next.
Oh, wow.
We've got some stuff to do in the beginning of next year in terms of renewing Miro's passport and starting to apply for visas and stuff, but we have to actually scrimp and save a little bit to see if we can afford the flights together, because jumping from one continent to another is a little expensive.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So let's jump right in. Just tell us a little bit about your background. You started traveling, was it 3 years ago? What, 5?
Yeah, actually, we just started our 5th year of travel. Well, I mean, it depends. Some people might call it travel. We left the United States just actually over 4 years ago. And so we just began our 5th year. Haven't completed it yet. Some people would call what we're doing traveling. Other people would say that it's expat life, but I'd say it's a combination of both, and it's just exploring the world without an actual itinerary and just guided based on our inspiration.
So let's just jump backwards a little bit. You had your own business in California, and you then decided to pack up and travel with your 10-year-old son. So just tell us about the deciding factor in that.
Well, quickly about my background. I worked for almost a total of 18 years in marketing, branding, advertising, and .com. And I first got into that kind of work through .com in the early 90s. And I worked in a lot of different segments. And I became a creative director and worked in advertising, creating campaigns, and really saw all different aspects of creating consumer messaging. And then the last 8 years of my career, I had opened up my own agency because of the first .com crash. And I decided that I wanted to focus on using my talents for good instead of evil. So I was working in branding, and I was working for green eco businesses and nonprofits. And because I was a single parent, opening up my own business and focusing on the type of work that I wanted to was a brilliant alternative. And my agency was a boutique brand agency and became pretty successful in Los Angeles for several years. And then the economy crashed in 2008. And after during that entire year, I knew that we were struggling. All of our clients that were our core-based clients started to just go away. Their budgets were cut, and I was stressed. Being a single parent, owning your own business, I was feeling so beyond stress. It wasn't even funny. Well, it was late in 2008, around September. I started getting these I don't know if they're visions, if they're dreams, if they're guttural inspirations. But they kept saying, get out of here, get rid of your stuff, go travel, go enjoy your life. And I started dreaming of Costa Rica, which I'd never been to. And I was seeing green, lush jungles and mountains and volcanoes. And to me, maybe it was my mind's way of coping through the stress, but something inside of me, deep inside of me, kept saying, follow this. There's something in there. Do this. And when I first started talking to Muriel, my son, about it, who was 9 at the time, what do you think about just like getting rid of all this stuff? We had a giant loft, and we had a Mercedes, and, we had our schedules, and we had our stuff. What do you think about just, getting rid of the consumer lifestyle we've been talking about that is just eating us alive, and let's go have an adventure? And he's like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, 9-year-old boy. I mean...
Yeah, and the other promise was he didn't have to go to school. And he's, oh, yeah. So and once we were both on board together, we both had this collective vision, we started to make those plans, and it took us until the middle of the following year to actually leave. We left on July 1st, 2009, and he had just turned 10 then. So
where did you go first?
We went to Mexico. We're from California, so Mexico was pretty close. And our plan, the idea was, by the time we had sold everything and I had my savings and we had all the bills paid off, everything, ties completely broken, we're done. And that, by the way, was a stressful 6 months, but we got through it because we both had this collective vision. So we started off in Mexico. And the goal was to end up in Argentina by the end of the year. Well, it's almost 5 years later, and we still haven't made it to Argentina. But that's okay. We're
getting there slowly.
Slowly.
Very slowly.
There's been, I look back at who we were when we first started traveling to who we are now, the changes in who we are, not only as human beings, but our relationship and to each other, and our relationship to time, our relationship to money, our relationship to the world, to cultures, to learning, to all of these different things has changed completely. God, looking back at like the scared, the scared mom and son questioning, what the hell are we doing in Mexico to who we are now. We're so different.
And did your family think you were crazy when you told them your plans?
Totally. Who wouldn't? A single mom taking her child, with blonde hair, taking her child to those dangerous places. Of course, they thought we were nuts. We even had one friend who we thought was pretty progressive say, you guys should get kidnap insurance. And that still cracks me up. I just think of the logic behind kidnap insurance. Apparently.
I think fear holds back a lot of people doing mild things, never mind doing what you did. Fear of the unknown, fear of like, what if something happened to you, or fear of like if something happened to your son. How did you break through that fear barrier?
Wow, that's a really good question. I write about fear a lot, but what I like to focus on is the power of inspiration, that spark that prompted us to do this in the first place. Throughout the first year, I got to learn the voice of my inspiration, intuition, and then I also got to learn what the voice of fear was, and it lands in different places in my body. And I would have never even had the opportunity to examine this had we not started this. You're so not in your body when you're working in an office, when you're working in a conventional life, and you've got schedules and stress. But the traveling part really allowed me to slow down and look at those things. So for me, inspiration comes in my heart. And when I feel a strong pull to do something, I'm really tapped in. And that's the power that I have to move forward. Fear feels different too in my body. Sometimes most of the time it's in my gut, but intuition that keeps me safe is a little bit higher. So when it's between my heart and my gut, and when something says intuitively, don't walk down that street, I listen. So, those are some tools.
So how old is Miro now? He is 13?
14. He'll be 15 in 6 months. He's grown up in this life.
Okay, so you have a teenage son now. So how does that work when you're living in such close proximity to each other? I mean, I have a 10-year-old and he'd be great to travel with and he'd be easygoing, but I've also a 16-year-old and I mean, she has her own opinions and that, so that, might cause difficulties when you're traveling. So how does that work for you and Miro?
Well, this lifestyle has really, we were close to start off with, obviously. And only having a single child, I'm sure, is very different than having two because your attention is split, I would imagine. I don't know. And I'm not an expert on anything child rearing. I only know what our experience has given us. But because we've had this opportunity, we've taken from day one, we've decided that this is a partnership. So it shifts the energy of our relationship quite a bit. So it's not because Mom said so. It's because we talk about things and we're each other's resources on the road. And especially during the first year when we were both very unsure, not only of the language, but of our finances and what's next, and getting comfortable with a new lifestyle and not having possessions. That's a big one too. All we had was each other. So I am one of the most blessed people in the world, and I'm so grateful that I'm able to experience this part of my child's life with my full attention. I know it's not possible for everybody because there's conventional lifestyles and work and obligations and etc. But I would urge anybody who can make time to do this, even in a small period of time. The benefits are just tremendous. The relationship that I have with my son is incredible. And he's a teenager. He has nothing to rebel against.
It's usually if the parent rebels from the norm, the child is nearly more grounding.
Yeah, exactly.
So Miro is 15 now, so if he was back in the States, he would be in high school. How do you work out schooling?
Well, when we first left the States, my decision was, okay, 1 year, no school. I believe and I know that you're going to learn more in this 1 year than you would in 5th grade in Los Angeles School District, public school district. So I had no problems with taking him out for 1 year. But near the end of the first year, when my son and I, in partnership, decided to continue this lifestyle, we both said, why bother stopping? This is amazing. I knew as a parent, my responsibility was to figure out what I was going to do about his education. So I started to do research, and I discovered this crazy thing called unschooling just by searching for alternative forms of education. And I realized we were doing that already. I'd never heard of it. I had never even considered homeschooling my child because I had always bought into the idea that it was somebody else's job to educate my child. And I, had to run my business and do this and do that. And, of course I couldn't do that. So I had never even explored those concepts. I just put my trust in Los Angeles Unified School District and hoped for the best. But as we began to travel for the first year and there was no focus on learning in a formal curriculum, he was learning anyway. He was so curious, all these new sights and sounds, and he spoke Spanish in 1 year without studying. I still don't speak Spanish very well. But, he was absorbing. He was a natural learner, and everything was exciting. We would, through his eyes, I would learn to look at things for the first time that I had seen over and over throughout my entire life. So the learning part, the curiosity was happening without effort. So after we discovered there was something actually, to label this type of learning, we were on board. We're like, you know what? We're unschoolers. I don't care. We're natural learners. We're autodidactics. We're all of these things. But what learning about unschooling from the parents' perspective did for me was it gave me some of the foundations on how to support him. So we're in partnership with our travels. We're in partnership with our lives. And, I would imagine in 3-4 years he's going to want to go off on his own. So I'm just milking it until until it's over. But it's been such an honor to support him. And then I'm sorry, there's one more thing I want to add about the unschooling or the natural learning. I've realized that I just turned 47. I realized that I'm still learning too. So being in partnership with my son and he being an unschooler, I am too. So I'm learning, I'm studying, I'm picking up new things. So together, we're supporting each other.
So do you do all the touristy things when you go to a new place, like visit exhibitions and monuments, or is it more living in the environment that is the unschooling experience?
Well, it depends. We both have a wide variety of interests. I mean, I love history, archaeology. I'm obsessed with extraterrestrial life. I mean, I love that stuff. Just fascinates me. So I'm always reading about aliens, and it's the big joke. I mean, I'm not saying I believe in it. I'm just saying, to me, all of those things are just sparking my curiosity. Miro's got a huge interest in cryptozoology, mythology, zombies, but he's also found that he loves permaculture and anything to do with plants and animals. So these are new things. So when we go to a new place, we're always looking for things that are within our interests and then things that spark our interests that are outside of our either interest, areas of interest to see if it's something that'll, intrigue us. And then sometimes, because we're in partnership, my son may not be interested in it and he'll go to support me and vice versa. So it's a really nice way of exploring and stepping outside of your comfort zone and stepping outside of your interests too.
And I mean, this all sounds great, but on an adult level or on his level, that how do you do having friends? Like if you're traveling a lot, or if you want adult company, or if he wants to hang out with kids his own age, how does that work? Does that happen, or how does that work out?
This is a question that's asked a lot. Miro's a teenager, so he's sleeping right now. It's 10:30 in the morning. Otherwise, I'd love for you to talk to him. He is very, very bright and very intellectual, and finds a lot of time that he doesn't have a whole lot in common with kids his age that are less cerebral, that are more into what kids his age are into. But for example, right now, Miro's obsessed with H.P. Lovecraft and is reading this. And I didn't read that until I was in college. So, there's a sense of, he's got more in common with adults. So traveling, we meet a lot of travelers and he'll sit down and talk to anybody about politics and about world travel and about, any number of topics.
And he does as well, doesn't he? Write quite a lot.
He does. Although he's more interested in writing about writing fiction versus writing about current events. Although he's very opinionated about current events and politics and all sorts of stuff. So, but he does have just a small handful of friends that, believe it or not, are children from traveling families that he's met online. So those are his peers. And he talks to them and, they have the same, there's that similarity.
Okay, so I suppose the next question is a little bit awkward and you probably get asked it all the time, But how do you afford things? How do you pay for food? How do you live if you aren't going out to work?
Yeah, that's a fair question, and that's another one we get asked a lot. The first year of our travels, we had savings, so that was great. After a year and a half, or maybe a little bit less, we had nothing. So the second year, I was able to do some freelance in my old field, and I was able to do some consulting, some branding, even some small web development stuff, which is, piece of cake for me. And that was great, and that supported us for the second into the third year. But as the third year started, I realized that that kind of work, even though it was putting money on our table, just made me stressed. I didn't want to do it. I was done. I had a real great career and I have a lot of skills, but I didn't want to do that. So in the meantime, we were blogging and sharing our experiences, mostly originally for family and friends. And then it became a little more popular, and we started to attract advertisers and some sponsors. And then I started to get asked to do some writing gigs, and which is interesting for me because I never thought of myself as a writer. I am notorious for typos and grammar, but I'm a very expressive writer. And when I owned my agency, I had writers and editors that would clean all that stuff up. I'm big picture girl, and but blogging actually seemed to be a really good way to express and share our experiences. And we didn't set out to inspire others, but we ended up inspiring other single moms and people that were interested in this kind of education and people that were just curious. So right now we earn about anywhere between, you're going to just drop off your chair because it's not very much money, $800 to about $1,100, $1,200 a month.
Okay.
And we live on that.
And that probably goes a long way in Peru.
In Peru, it does. I used to earn what I earn in a year now in a month in Los Angeles. So not only was it an adjustment in terms of how we live, but it's what we live off of and what we spend our money on. Now my son and we prefer to spend our time and energy on collecting memories instead of things. So, like this sweater I've had for 4 years now, So
do you see yourself ever going back to the American lifestyle, living in California that way again?
Never. I've been ruined. There's absolutely no way.
What do you love most about your current lifestyle that you wouldn't like to let go of?
The ability to live from inspiration and the freedom to move and go wherever, whenever the wind blows us, and the learning that's happening in both of us.
So inspirational, and never know, I might get out to Peru myself at some stage.
Well, come visit us in Peru.
I'll wait till the rainy season's over.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's smart. So, well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so it's been great. Do you want to mention the project you were working on?
Oh, sure. One of the things that we were inspired to do here was to share this vast amount of learning that both Miro and I have been doing. Peru's a really inspirational place. There's the history, there's the archaeology, there's the culture, there's the mysticism, and there's the artisan aspects with the weaving and the instruments and the flutes. So we put together an actual unschoolers retreat, and we're calling it Project Unschool Peru, where we're inviting families and teens alone, if they want to come and create a temporary learning community with us so we can share and explore all of these amazing, inspirational ideas and concepts with them. It's incredible. I mean, the reason why we've stayed in Peru so long is because we're constantly inspired, and that's the kind of thing we want to share with other people. So
I'll put a link up to that on my website, lifeisshortmagazine.com, and a link to your blog so that people can go over, check out what you're doing, and get in touch with you. So, Lainey, it has been absolutely fabulous talking to you. Thank you so much, and I hope people have enjoyed it, and I look forward to talking to you again.